Hey team, welcome back to the show. Today it is Coach Andrea and I talking through part 2 of the Mastering Body Recomposition series. Again, really targeting this more specifically to more advanced clients, more advanced individuals. Last week we talked through training strategies for more advanced clients. So again, remember, body recomposition means building muscle, losing fat at the same time. It is very feasible. We work with typically women 30 to 50, already been in the gym for a long time, track their food consistently, already have an above average physique, but want to take things to the next level. And we found over and over body recomposition, again, losing fat, building muscle at the same time, is very feasible. But the approach that you take here is so important. Specifically, we need to achieve this concept of training and nutrition synergy. Really, our nutrition and our training need to be working together. It shouldn't just be, as most coaches look at this, as just like, I just give the person a training program, I don't really think about it, I don't touch it. And that doesn't vary based on like their biofeedback, how they're responding and progressing, what phase of nutrition they're in, where we need to be very cognizant of with basically both these nutrition and training levers, what we're doing to make sure we're applying the appropriate amount of stress to drive the adaptations as far as fat loss and muscle growth we want, while still allowing us to recover, not applying too much stress to where we actually regress. So again, this concept of training and nutrition synergy being so vital for achieving body recomposition here. So within that, again, first week we talked about training. This week we are going to be digging into nutrition and cardio strategies. So it'll be fun. I'm excited to get into this one. Andrea, I know we had chatted through next week, because you just wrapped up your podcast, or not your podcast, your photo shoot that we have talked through so much over the last few months. Next week, we're going to do a full summary of that. But outside of that, I imagine probably not a lot to update anyone on. I don't really have a whole lot either, so I'm just going to save my updates for our next episode as well. But anything else you want to talk through before we get into it?
Yeah, not really. I'm reverse dieting now, so we can talk about that whenever we get into everything. It feels good to eat a lot more salt now. That's been great. Don't have to measure that anymore. So I feel good.
Okay. I love it.
I'm excited to talk about it next week.
All right. Well, in that case, let's go ahead and get into the episode. So again, nutrition and cardio considerations for body recomposition. So first, there are a couple important physiological considerations that come into play here when we are determining things like, where's our nutrition set at? First being, how lean is the client? And again, it's important to understand with this series that the more advanced, basically the leaner and more muscular the person is, the more all these advanced concepts become important. Really, if this person isn't very lean yet, if it's like, hey, we have to lose 30 pounds to get to kind of a leaner, healthy body fat, we already have a lot of, think of body fat almost like endogenous food, energy already stored inside our body that our body will be able to use as fuel. So again, we don't need to be as concerned with these variables. But it's also important to consider, how aggressively are we dieting? And we'll talk through this a little bit more in a moment, but if someone is dieting quite aggressively in one of these phases, basically the less recovery resources, less calories we have coming in, the less we can typically recover from in regards to training. And similarly, are we pushing for a specific timeline? Right? If it's, hey, we've been achieving body recomposition, but this person has this photo shoot in 8 weeks and they want to be shredded by this and we're not nearly as close as I want to be, we might have to be okay with, hey, maybe we do need to pull training back a bit. Maybe we can't like recover from quite as much here, and we have to be okay with, we're dieting more aggressively, our training isn't quite as well fueled. We're okay with maybe just maintaining tissue rather than pushing for body recomposition in order to hit this timeline. How much muscle do we have? Going to be very important. We talked previously about the importance of muscle glycogen in regards to our ability to train hard. And today we'll probably touch on things like refeeds and basically the importance of carbs and adequate carb intake here. But the thing here is, if the client doesn't have a whole lot of muscle and or isn't good at training hard, which if we have a lot of muscle and we're not good at training hard, we don't really see that very often. So normally those things go hand in hand unless you're really genetically gifted. So in this instance, again, as well, if it's like, hey, this is a brand new client we're working with and they haven't built a whole lot of muscle, I'm not all that concerned with like, do we need to refeed and refill their muscle glycogen stores or make sure we're doing all these things to like get them maintain the fullest muscle glycogen stores possible. It's really like, if that's a goal in this phase, it's really, hey, we just need to get you better at training hard. We need to get you leaner. And over time, maybe that becomes more of a concern, but right now it's not necessarily. But again, the leaner and more muscular someone is, the more important all these variables will be. But for example, a beginner client with a lot to lose, hey, do I actually need to like implement or refeed or implement like an intra-workout carb drink for them to make sure that they're like not too depleted in their training? We can push hard? No, probably not. Anything else you would throw in there?
With somebody who is, like you said, more muscular, leaner, it becomes a lot more of a push and a pull. You can't just continually push someone. Whereas, like you said, someone that has a lot more endogenous food, you can really just push for a good bit of time. And the refeeds and things like that become much more psychologically beneficial versus physiologically beneficial. There's a guy who had a lot of body fat to lose. He was like sort of like morbidly obese, and he just did no food for, I don't remember how long.
It was like a year.
Just took multivitamins. Yeah, like a year. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, like
Have
in the 60s, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that, I mean, we're never going that extreme, of course.
Here's your meal plan. Is meal one is water,
like,
meal two is water.
That's a case where his body literally just fed off of stored food for a full year, and he just made sure to get his micronutrients, which is crazy.
And
so that's
water,
like an extreme example. But whenever somebody is a lot closer to as much muscle as they're going to have and very lean, we have to have that push and pull.
Mm-hmm. That is very, very important. That push pull is a very good way to put it, where we have to be a lot more focused on like, hey, what signals is their biofeedback sending us as far as like, do we need to refeed? Do we need to push food up, etc. So when we're looking at how quickly we have a client losing, let me just lay out, I'm going to surprise hit you with this question because I decided I don't like the outline that I have here. We're working at a client, let's say it's a pretty standard, let's say we're at around like 25% body fat, woman, I would say like pretty average amount of muscle. There's for sure more to build. So we're not all that lean yet. Biofeedback isn't suffering all that much. We're just getting started with them in kind of this recomp phase. Do you like to start out more aggressively there, or do you like to start from the gate like, hey, we're going to go a little bit slower when it comes to how quickly are we losing?
I like to do a primer phase first to see how their body responds, fairly close to maintenance, maybe a small deficit, but also see how they're training. And so then that's going to guide me on the answer to that question, because if I can get them training really well over those first 2 to 4 weeks of a primer phase, we can, they're just really going to make better results. They're going to get better results either way, whether we go less aggressive or more aggressive with the diet. But if they're not quite as good at pushing, we'll probably go more aggressive and get more of that fat loss benefit from it while we work on the training portion too, to get that into a better place. Because if you go less aggressive in that case where they're not that great at training yet, you're just not really going to see too much.
Yeah.
They just won't change very much. I mean, they might see improvements in digestion and things like that, but like if we really want to make some changes, I'd go more aggressive until they're really good at training.
I think that's a really good way to approach it as well. That's very similar to how I would go about it. If someone's, again, higher body fat, basically the higher body fat and the less muscle we have, the more aggressive I'm going to start us initially. The leaner we are, more muscle we have, the slower we're going to go. I think of a couple of clients I'm working with right now who have been really interesting ones, because it's like we're working food up, so not quite the same context as we're talking about here, but we're still recomping, right? Every week we're seeing like body measurements shift slightly. And even like as we work food up, like a scale dropping, like it might be like a quarter pound but hey, we're seeing recomp, like physique is looking better every week. But it is very important here really to, when we're talking about body recomp, especially for a more advanced client, to not be too focused on the scale. I think that's one of the biggest things here. And we're not going to want to push, if it's getting the best recomposition effect, we're not going to want to push fat loss too quickly. I would say here, like, hey, maybe if we're losing 0.5% of body weight per week, even in that though, a lot of times there will be weeks where in this instance, dude, physique looks a lot better. Body measurements drop. We're just not seeing the scale move that much, especially as we get closer to, like, the lighter the person is, the more true this is, right? Where a lot of our clients being like, hey, we're like 120, 130 pounds. A lot of times the scale just doesn't hardly move at all for a very long period of time. And it's okay because measurements are improving, progress pictures are improving. So I think it is very important to be much more focused on the progress pictures, body measurements, how those are changing. Anything else you would add there?
And also performance in the gym.
Oh yeah, that's huge.
Because a lot of times if we're not seeing things change that much, but they're getting a lot stronger in the gym, I'll always reinforce like how good of a sign that is that we're seeing good recomp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because as long as we are continuing to execute well, we're getting a good stimulus from our movements, we're building muscle there. Mm-hmm. And you will typically be able to tease those little things out in the progress pictures. It's just really, again, when we're aiming for recomp rather than I just want to see the quickest like fat loss possible, because they're not the same goal. We just have to be okay with things moving quite a lot slower visually. Now, like 6 months from now, it'll pay off, right? You'll for sure be able to see the changes, but it's less week to week. Typically smaller changes that we're going to be seeing. Okay, so as far as in this instance, like when we're implementing an intra-workout drink, how do you decide when you typically like want to introduce that for a client?
Gosh, I don't know if I have a standard there. It's always just like person to person. I kind of know when we're ready for that. Mm-hmm. A lot of it depends on how their training is looking. Usually for somebody who's just getting started in body recomp, I'm not going to use that. Yeah. I will usually introduce it as part of a reverse diet. Like that's like one of the steps in a reverse diet sometimes. Because we are adding total calories and carbs to the day, but it allows me to add a little bit more aggressively because some of those are intra-workout and like almost never going to be stored as energy. In a body recomp situation, I would start to introduce that when we're not being as aggressive with fat loss. Well, actually that's maybe not true. It depends on, it just depends on so many things. I keep going in so many different directions mentally.
I've turned this into like a surprise interview for you.
I started to say not whenever we're getting more aggressive with the deficit, but sometimes that would be actually a reason that I would use it because then we have a little bit more energy in training. If somebody is training fasted or they're going in without a meal, because they're training really, really early. That is often when I'll put one in just because we want to have those carbs coming in. We don't want to go in completely fasted. So we'll use like EAAs and intra-workout carbs if somebody just really cannot eat anything beforehand. But then if somebody is really good at training and we're chasing recomp and we're a little bit less aggressive with the deficit, that's also when I'll use one because we have a little bit more food to play with and it's not like we need to have those extra 15 grams of carbs to chew the rest of the day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And I agree more and more. I've gone to, if we're good at training, it is very unlikely that this is actually going to have like a negative, unless I'm doing like a shit ton of carbs in that inter-workout drink. So for the listener, basically we're talking about like an inter-workout carbohydrate drink and a couple other things we could include, which we'll talk about in a moment. More and more gone to if the person is, hey, we train well, we train hard, probably going to be beneficial, and more biasing it towards, even if it does take food a little bit higher, I'm okay with that in place. So typically I would say the question I posed to you, which is a hard one to answer as far as when do you introduce it, once someone is training well, training hard, if I have plenty of room to work with, or if we're not in a deficit, I'll for sure want to introduce this. And it would typically entail, of course, like we want plenty of water. So basically within this, we want the person to be hydrated. Even us being a little dehydrated can hurt our training performance. So we want water, sodium, potassium. Typically going to be some essential amino acids there as well. Stimulate muscle protein synthesis, basically put us in a more anabolic state, give our body the substrates it needs to build new muscle tissue. And carbs, basically carbs helping training performance, replenishing muscle glycogen, basically the fuel that our muscles use, of course, to push in that, 40-ish, their anaerobic lactic energy system, that like 15 to 40 seconds, maybe up to like 60 seconds of intense activity. Typically that's going to be fueled by carbs. And if our muscle glycogen stores get too low, this can have a negative impact on our ability to recruit all of the muscle fibers within whatever tissue you're trying to train, and thus stimulate growth. So it can be important, but again, it really comes down to like, does a person train hard? So that's what I would say is like, typically, okay, we're training hard, we're training well. And especially if we're starting to notice a little bit of deterioration in their training performance, but I don't necessarily think there's a need for like a deload. A lot of times just more carbs intra-specifically will help there. And as you said, that's one of the biggest things we're looking at is, hey, how are we performing in the gym, and making sure we're maintaining that, because that's like one of the most important pieces to us recomping. Anything else you would add there?
Something that I took from Coach Natalie is a lot of times I've started to have that just be sort of like a standard untracked thing. So
that's what I was going to say too, actually.
Yeah, that was a really good idea from her. So basically just prioritizing that, because a lot of times I'll check back in on an intra-workout drink later on that I had added for someone, and they're like, I was hungry, so I just took that and started eating it in other parts of the day. And we don't want that. We want to have that be prioritized. And so, as I mentioned with using it as part of the reverse diet, something that I'll do is make a smaller adjustment, but still an adjustment up in their actual food, but then also add like, hey, we're going to do a 15 grams of carbohydrate intra-workout. Don't track it. This is just a standard part of your workouts now.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and I've started using that with a couple people as well, because it can be like, but this is taken away from what I could be eating as food.
Yeah.
Unless people now know we're doing this because it's this podcast, and so please don't do that. But I do think, for a point I was going to originally make with all this is, for that more advanced individual, again, muscle glycogen being so important for our ability to train hard. This being something that basically we have very quick digesting carbs, which will aid our ability to train hard, will help us basically replenish those muscle glycogen stores, can be beneficial in us maintaining training performance. So I think when we're looking at like a more advanced client trying to recomp, this really does help support training performance. Other thoughts on
Anytime
intra-drink?
we can support training performance, that's like always what we want to focus on. That's the reason that we have that peri-workout nutrition. Anytime performance is better, that means more muscle, that means leaner, and also feeling better and more excited about the gym. So it's just positive all around.
Absolutely. And really, that's one of the biggest things I think when it comes to recomp is it will hurt a little bit sometimes, especially as we get leaner. Like, I feel like I've recomped a little bit throughout like the last 8-ish weeks or so, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's like, biofeedback hasn't been terrible. Definitely, it's not been bad really at all, but I can for sure like tell I'm dieting. And I would say that like even this is much more focused on fat lossing. It's cool that we're building a little bit of muscle, and we do want to maintain training performance as best possible, but it's not like set up optimally for me to be able to build muscle, which technically would still be a surplus for us, but it is pushing things a little bit harder. But the better we can keep your biofeedback, the better we can keep you feeling in the gym, the better all this is going to go. When it comes to cardio, if feasible here, I definitely think that for this more advanced person, it makes sense to use more cardio to drive the deficit. Basically, if we can feed you more food, which will allow us to train harder, recover better, probably feel more satiated, and use more cardio to drive fat loss. So again, food we're using to support more training, better recovery, and using more cardio to drive more fat loss and burn more calories. Rather than us just dropping food lower, I see consistently a lot better body composition outcomes like that. We talked through a lot that like fasted cardio the benefits of that. We've talked a lot about yohimbine. I'm not going to touch on yohimbine here. We've talked about it a lot lately. But I also think in this instance, fasted cardio could be beneficial because not that there's a difference between like us burning fat and us losing fat, right? So when we're doing cardio fasted, as long as we are like in this, again, this is typically why we would aim for that like zone 2, right? Like what is it? Age 220 minus your age times 0.7 basically is like about what our heart rate should be for zone 2 cardio. When we're in that range, we are typically going to, and we're doing this fasted, we are going to be burning more fat. If we're in a fasted state, by that point, like insulin should have like shuttled all the glucose out of your bloodstream and to different cells. So here we'll typically be in this state burning more fat for fuel because there's not a lot of like glucose available but readily in the bloodstream, instead of glycogen. Whereas if we are trading in a fed state, a little bit more likely we're going to be burning glucose/glycogen, probably again glucose available in the bloodstream, glycogen being like stored glucose. We want to really preserve that for our actual training sessions. So fasted cardio could probably be more ideal in this instance. Hey, we have more muscle glycogen, more glucose available for later, to use as fuel to really support that heart training. Again, burning more fat. Now, again, when I'm saying burning fat, it is still like, yes, we might be burning more fat for fuel, but still like our net deficit across the course of the day matters. Like, so it's burning fat. Like I could do fasted cardio, burn fat, and then go eat 5,000 calories, and it still doesn't mean I like lost fat, net fat across the day. But anything else you would add on the cardio front as far as like benefits of that potentially?
Yeah, not really. I mean, like you said, it allows us to eat more food. And going back to protecting our training performance, that's basically what we're doing with that. So I don't really have much to add there. I mean, if you look at an athlete, that's kind of that same model. Like athletes burn a lot of food. They also take in a lot of food, and maintain a really lean body composition.
Or if you look at an Amish person, also true.
That's true. Yeah, there's good research on that.
There's a lot of research on like Amish communities, and they just walk everywhere, right?
Well, yeah, and then it's all manual labor. Even like the men are like building stuff, and the women are like washing clothes by hand on a whatever they use. But then they're also eating very high calorie food. And the men are, I can't remember what the body fat percentage is, but it was like a ridiculously low body fat percentage that most of them hold, like 8%, 8 to 10 maybe.
Yeah, it was really, really low. So if you ever wonder why all of your Amish friends are shredded, I actually have a couple Amish clients. I have to like mail them their plan every week. I'm sorry, this is dumb. Just hilarious to think about. I'm like, oh. Anyways.
They found us through Instagram.
Yeah, remote coaching them. Anyways, but cardio can be extremely helpful here. And I think that it is I don't know if this is my perception of it. I feel like still the industry is a lot more like, hey, we're going to pull calories lower. For the gym pop space, I don't think this is true in bodybuilding at all, but for the gym pop space, a lot more, hey, we're going to pull calories lower. We don't want to like add cardio. Cardio is a lot more of like basically just this perception that cardio sucks and it like sucks the life out of people, which really isn't true at all. My clients, it's funny to think even from like a year or two ago versus now how much more cardio my clients do. People just consistently get better results. We can eat a lot more food. We can build more. And I think that like as a coach, not being afraid to use it as a tool and also understanding just like how much easier it does make so much of this, especially when we're talking about this for women, which this is very much what this is geared towards. Women will have to, just because we'll typically have a smaller frame, the amount of calories you can eat to lose or maintain will be so much lower, right? If I can lose on 2,800 calories, you might have to lose on like 1,300 to 1,400 calories. That sucks, right? Like, what was your deficit intake?
The average was, I think, 1,500 or maybe 1,550 at the very end.
Okay. But how many days of cardio were you doing? For how
5.
long?
5 for about 35 minutes.
Okay. So if we weren't doing that, you might have been on like 1,300 calories a day,
Yeah.
right? Which would, and you're like 140? 150?
Yeah, close now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Like 5'9", right?
Yeah.
Like it's not like you're like 5 foot, 110 pounds where you, again, our intake would be even lower. But if it wasn't, like that's someone, hey, we're moving quite a lot. If, again, we're like not doing a whole lot of movement, the intake we have to diet on can sometimes just be so low. It's just like, hey, just can we nail our micronutrient intake? Can we get enough protein? There's not a whole lot of room for like, hey, let's make sure we can get enough carbs to really fuel our training well. Whereas cardio can be such a helpful lever to pull there. And I just think it's important, both like as a client or as a coach, to just, again, not make a huge deal out of it. Just because I feel like this is a mistake I made in the past. I used to feel so bad about asking my clients to do cardio, where people are super down for it. And it's like, you feel good when you do it. It does help a lot. It's, for most of us, worth it to eat more food. I mean, like my cardio is at 7 days a week, 40 minutes now. I like it. It's really not a big deal at all. Most people too, a lot of people have like, my apartment or at home, I have access to a treadmill or an elliptical or something like that. Yeah,
Even if
but
you
very,
don't,
very helpful
you can
tool
get
there.
a spin bike off of Marketplace for so cheap. I think ours was like $50, maybe $100.
Oh yeah. Yeah. These days there's so many like easy, good options. Like there's tons of good options on like the Facebook Marketplace. I would, if you have the luxury of getting like I have a folding adjustable treadmill, like the inclines, declines, something like that. I do like I know we've talked about for you, like you kind of wish you had a different option than the spin bike, right?
Yeah, especially because I'm doing so much lower body training. My legs just
Yeah.
got pretty fatigued. My husband decided he didn't think we could fit the elliptical through our bedroom door because of the angle. So I kind of gave up on it, but I might have to revisit that. But yeah, I mean, your legs do start to get pretty tired. So if you can get your heart rate up with an incline treadmill and keep it there, I think that's a really good option.
For sure. Or like elliptical is a great option too. There's even like so many like little mini Stairmasters I see these days.
Yeah.
I see the Stairmaster personally more so, like more similar to the bike, and I do find it's a little bit more fatiguing for lower body, but I don't know if in this instance that's a huge concern. Anyways, cardio, very helpful tool here. If we are someone who's more advanced, I would absolutely want to bias that move more, eat more approach in order to allow us to build more muscle as well. When it comes to different macro setups here, training day, rest day, would you say that would probably be your preferred approach? Or do you think you go, again, thinking more so just the specific, hey, this person already trains well, they're already pretty lean, trying to get leaner, a little bit more like your more advanced client?
I definitely like to start there.
Okay.
So I will typically start with higher carbs on training days, lower carbs on rest days. And then the progression of that when we need to pull calories down is usually a larger pull from rest days, maybe a little bit of a pull from training days if we need it. And then at some point, it might become necessary to start to do more of a carb cycle approach. So 2 days low, 1 day high, or 3 days low, 1 day high. Or implementing dig days, which is a couple of days of the week where we basically just go protein and veggies. That allows us to keep food higher on the other days of the week, which is a big benefit of that. So I've used that a lot for recomp because we can create a large deficit with those 2 days and preserve more carbs on the other days of the week, at least 1 to 2 days, to where we get that nice refeed effect. So that's kind of the progression where I like to start with training day, rest day, but it doesn't always stay that way throughout the diet. It most of the time doesn't, actually.
Yeah, I would agree. And something I've done more recently, I guess, again, this is important to keep in mind, like the context here. We're talking about body recomposition. Or I have a couple clients who like have just started fat loss phases who are more in this advanced category. I've been working with them for a while though. And we are, hey, right out of the gate, first couple weeks, we're going super aggressive. Like I set up, hey, here's what our typical training day, rest day would be. Our rest day, I do typically like to be quite a lot lower carb, lower food in general. That's where we're driving a lot more of the deficit when we're looking at this training day, rest day approach. Training day, got to be higher carb, more fuel around the time that we're going to need it, really fueling our ability to train hard, recover well. But maybe, hey, the first week, we might do, we're only eating your rest day the entire week. And I want you to like keep your intra-workout carb drink on the days that you're training, drop it on your rest days, of course. Maybe week 2, we're adding in like one higher day, everything else is the rest day. And then when I start to see training performance take a little bit of hit, then we're going to switch over to that like training day, rest day approach. But that's more so like, hey, we're losing aggressively the first couple of weeks. That's honestly a completely different topic than body recomposition. But I would say, I like the when we're looking at body recomp, I like the training day, rest day approach a lot. And typically a pretty decent gap between like, what does our training day, rest day intake actually look like? Now, when we are getting leaner and leaner, there also comes a time where we have to decide for a more advanced client, like, hey, is it worth it for us to keep squeezing out body recomposition? Like kind of prioritizing equally building muscle and losing fat, or I would say still it's probably like 60-ish, maybe like 60% fat loss, 40% fat loss as far as our priorities, right? Like building is still important and we're okay with losing slower, but we eventually get to a point where we're going to have to decide like, is it worth it for us to keep moving this slow? Or do we want to really just go all in a fat loss more and get that done with sooner and get back to the point where we have more food coming in and we can just build more productively at maintenance or in a surplus? And at that point, that's a lot of times more where it's shifting from like a training day, rest day approach to, hey, maybe we are just doing a linear, or like maybe we're doing like a lot of low days and we like have refeeds as needed or once or twice a week or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll usually phrase it to clients as like, we at some point in our physique development journey kind of run out of runway for body recomp to make sense. And so a lot of times we'll start with recomp and then I'll have a fat loss phase planned after that. So we're kind of like getting leaner and building muscle at the same time. And then we switch over and like just pull that fat loss lever, get the rest of the way leaner, and then we can get back to building muscle and eating more food.
Cool. I fully agree with all that. Anything else you think, again, more specific to body recomposition than like we're past the point where we decided we have to go into fat loss, like relative to refeeds, do you think that is even something you really use a lot in this context? I don't know if I find actually like in this instance we would really be using refeeds a whole lot.
No, because the
past
deficit
like the
is
training
by
days.
definition smaller. Yeah. Because we really we need refeeds to refeed from the more aggressive deficit in fat loss. Like we're depleting glycogen quite a bit more in that instance, and so refeeds are refilling glycogen, whereas with body recomp we're kind of we're focused on keeping some glycogen so that we can train really hard and really well and build muscle. So I don't really use them in that case.
Perfect. Any other thoughts before we wrap this up then that you would like to add?
I don't think so.
Cool. Well, that's what we have got for y'all for today. As always, we hope you guys enjoy the show. If you did enjoy it, please do us a huge favor. Leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen. That really does help so much with letting us reach more people. Shout out to my girl, Michelle. Been crushing it in coaching, but I also saw she just left us a great review. So thank you. Again, that doesn't go unnoticed, and we do really appreciate it. It helps us reach more people. If you would like to apply for coaching with our team, click the link in the show notes, and we will catch you guys next time.